US dollar crisis, a 50% loss in the next 2 years, maybe even sooner. What's up, everybody? My name is Mr. Beckman and I am with INFYNIT TV. And this video is going to show you some more facts and evidence that are stacking up against the United States economy and the value of the United States dollar. So if you're American and watching this, you're going to want to know what you need to do with your United States dollar so that you don't wake up one morning and find that they're worth half as much as they are today at the shooting of this video. Now, also, whenever a major economic collapse or downturn or currency collapse happens, you don't have to freak out. You just have to be aware of what the rich and the wealthy do. You have to follow the money. And then all you have to do is empower yourself with solutions and resources so that you can take action for yourself, your money, your assets, your loved ones, and your family members. So, to get right into it, if you're brand new to the INFYNIT YouTube channel, make sure to subscribe to this channel, turn your notification settings to all, and please like this video. And as always, if you have any questions, let me know in the comments below, and check the description below this video for all of the links to all the articles that I'm going to be sharing with you right now. All right, so in one of my more recent YouTube videos, I talked about the United States dollar and BRICS and what you need to know about and why you need to be paying attention to it. So if you didn't see that video, check it out. As a recap, right now, the United States dollar is mostly valued by the fact that other countries have been using the United States dollar to do trade with each other and to buy their oil and gas. Recently, the BRICS nations got together and said, hey, we're not using the United States dollar anymore. Why should that concern you? Because about 80% of the United States dollar's value right now is because of other countries buying enormous amounts of it and using it to do trade with each other and to buy their oil and gas. So if that goes away over the next year and a half, 2 years, your US dollar could go down to be worth only potentially even as low as 20% of its current value. Now, in this video title, I said only 50%. Because I'm always going to want to be conservative with my predictions. However, this is an article on my screen right now showing you that led by China, India, and the 5 BRICS nations now contribute more to the GDP, the gross domestic product, than industrialized G7. What that means is the G7 nations. United States being one of the G7. So historically, the G7 nations have been the highest economies. They get together and basically name themselves the leaders, the 7 leading countries. Now, in 2020, though, the BRICS nations, Brazil, Russia, Iran, China, South Africa, and other nations actually started doing better economically than the United States, Canada, France, Germany, and the other G7 nations. And since 2020, that trend of these BRICS nations doing better than the G7 nations has only continued. And so them moving away from the United States dollar and using it for trade and the purchasing of their oil is a really, really big deal. If you watch that BRICS nation video I showed you, the president of Kenya talks about their oil bill monthly was $500 million that they previously would have to buy in US dollars in order to buy oil and gas for their country. That's going away now. So here you can see some evidence that, yes, in fact, the BRICS nations are doing the best economically, and it's going to go and continue to be on an upward trend. Now, this was actually a really good article I found that describes why the United States dollar is in danger. So all I'm going to do in these videos is empower you with more facts and data so you can make your own decision as to whether or not you want to stay in the United States dollar, or if you want to get out into something else that should hopefully at least not go down in value, but ideally actually something that will go up in value. So this was a really interesting article that came out on CBS here 58, just a local news station that wrote the article, but the author did a really good job. Nicole, if you're watching this, congratulations. So she says right here at the very top of her article, let me see if I can zoom in on this so you guys can see it better. About 60% of the 12.8 trillion in global currency reserves are currently held in dollars, the US dollar, giving the US an exorbitant privilege over other countries. And that privilege pays because US government debt backed by the dollar is very attractive because interest rates are lower. The US dollar the US gets to borrow from other countries in its own currency. So if the US dollar loses value, the amount of debt that they borrowed goes down too. American businesses can make international transactions in dollars without having to pay conversion fees. I thought she did a really good job breaking this down. Perhaps most importantly, in extreme circumstances, the US can cut off dollar access to central banks around the globe, isolating and draining their economies. The former governor of the Reserve Bank of India calls this power an economic weapon of mass destruction. Basically, if the United States dollar is being used by countries all over the world and they need it to do trade, then socioeconomically, the United States could use, up until now, their dollar as a weapon. And this author of this article, Nicole, goes ahead and explains how the US detonated this weapon on Russia in February. And this article here was written just at the beginning of April, so she's referring to 2023. After the country invaded Ukraine, freezing $630 billion worth of Forex reserves and deeply undermining the value of the Russian ruble. That's the name of the Russian currency. That gave America the ability to punish Russia without getting US troops involved in war. So depending on where you're at in that side of the conflict, obviously you're like, hey, if you're, for the US and the rest of the world against Russia, you're like, hey, good work. But with great power comes great responsibility. When you use a weapon of mass destruction, even an economic one, people get spooked. And to protect themselves from the same fate as Russia, other countries diversify their investments away from the US dollar into other currencies. So in the first article, I showed you here that the BRICS nations have already publicly stated they're moving away from the United States dollar. Now, we just learned the United States government has used their currency as a socioeconomic weapon. Good for them for using it as a weapon against their enemies if that's what they want, but it spooks a lot of other nations. So now there's even more reason for other governments to move away from using the United States dollar as a global reserve currency, which means the less of it being bought, the less of it being traded, the more your US dollar that you're holding is going to go down in value. And because the United States is the world's largest economy, this affects every single other country's fiat currency value, unless perhaps they're a part of these BRICS nations, for many different reasons. Without getting into all the details, just know that even other countries' fiat currencies could get a little turbulent while things flush themselves out here. That's why what I'm going to be showing you in the rest of this video, what the wealthy are doing is they're going to be getting more and more into cryptocurrency and blockchain projects, as well as physical gold and silver. Because those things, when there's general market downturns, can at least not go down in value, but historically go up in value. Now, another interesting point to make about the BRICS nations, which is going to be highlighted a little later on right now, is that they're actually considering, and they've publicly announced, these BRICS nations, that they might create their own bank. And if they did that, they might even eventually create their own currency. And what they've said so far is that they will be backing their bank and their currency with actual assets of gold, oil, and gas. And that becomes a really big deal. If they do that, it could very well annihilate the United States currency and other currencies that are not backed by anything. You might have heard the story of how in the late 60s, early 70s, the United States Federal Reserve moved away from backing their United States dollar with physical gold, famously held at Fort Knox. And rather, they replaced on the United States legal tender "In God We Trust," because they're basically saying, hey, we don't have any gold to back it up anymore. So, we have faith in God. So, although the BRICS nations are already now pulling way ahead economically over the G7, which includes the United States, Canada, this article here goes ahead and shows you what's going on here. And check the description below for this article. If these BRICS nations start backing their currency and their bank with actual physical assets, of which there are none in the United States, virtually, it's definitely not backed, then you would expect this line here of the BRICS countries, the value of their currencies, just to keep going up, trending up. All right. Here's another article I found on Market Insider that just affirms what I'm sharing you to be factually true. The dollar's dominance as a reserve currency eroded last year at 10 times the pace seen in the past 2 decades. Now, you tell me why you think in the comments below. In just last year, 2022, the United States dollar went away as a global reserve currency more than 10 times. at 10 times the rate than it took place in the last 2 decades. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below, because that's obviously really bad compared to the last 20 years. The amount of which the United States dollar is being used globally went down 10 times the rate as per usual. Now, more on the information of backing things up with gold. So check this out. According to this article here is on another website, which is aheadoftheherd.com. It's pretty cool. They've got some great articles. Now, they are very much involved with China, but I look for objective, fact-based news in journalism all over the world. And when I like the reporting, I read it myself, and I'm sharing it with you here. So what this article talks about here is in 2023, the purchases of bulk gold that happened. Here it says that the largest purchases in the first 2 months of this year, 2023, so January and February, were made by non-Western nations. Singapore at 51.4 tons. Turkey, go figure, 45.5 tons. China, 39.8 tons. Russia, 31.1 tons. So these countries are buying a ton of gold. Why are they doing that? Well, the article tells us, in recent years, countries have been buying more and more gold to minimize their exposure to the United States dollar. So previous to really 2020, 2021, the United States dollar was used as something that you could hold your nation's wealth in. You could use it to trade with other countries. You could use it to buy your oil and gas, and it was stable. You didn't have to worry about it. Just like if you're watching this video, you don't have to worry. Up until now, you haven't had to worry if you're holding US dollar or your country's fiat currency. But I promise you, if the United States dollar starts tanking, you want to get out before that. If you're holding any government fiat currency, if the United States dollar starts tanking, you want to get out of any government fiat currency, with potentially the exception of the Chinese yuan and other BRICS nations. But like I mentioned, it could be a little turbulent while things are figuring themselves out. So I am going to suggest other assets like gold, silver, and crypto. This article is pretty interesting because it also says that there's a mystery buyer stockpiling gold in the recent years, not publicly saying it's one of these countries, but they're buying a ton of it. This article theorizes it could also be China, and they're thinking China could be buying so much gold because they might want to announce to the world that if you buy China's digital currency version, the Chinese yuan, that they might be saying they're going to back it with gold. So that would mean it's even more stable, it's even more assured, you can trust its value even more so, and its value is not going to just poof, go up in smoke overnight. So that's pretty interesting, right? So what is stagflation, and why does it impact the value of the United States dollar in the next 2 years or less, even more than everything I've already described to you? Well, it's a really, really big deal. Interest rates are going up. Economy's not doing well. And the last time that this happened was in and around the 1970s. And it culminated in the early 80s by the Federal Reserve at that time having to raise interest rates to 20%. Now, when they did that previously, it helped turn the economy back. It helped the United States dollar become stable again. Nowadays in 2023, raising interest rates to 20% is probably impossible and not very likely because of so many reasons. But think about it, if you don't have a fixed interest rate on your home and your home's worth, let's say $300K, that would be $60,000 a year in interest payments. Well, you're not only paying for your home, you got to eat and get gas. It's just not probably going to work. So the United States has gotten themselves into a really bad situation. Usually they would get themselves out of this situation by printing more money. Well, with their dollar going down and the value going down, printing more money causes the value to go down even more. And now you're in really hot water. Now, the number one solution I'm going to be drawing your attention to is here on INFYNIT TV. It is the INFYNIT i2 financial solution. Now, it's not yet live, so you're getting ahead of the curve with this announcement. But if you head on over here to INFYNIT TV, you can sign up. And in the next few weeks, when we turn on the i2 financial solution, it's going to be an easy, fast, and secure place for you to keep your money or your assets. The best part is, with banks blowing up like Signature Bank, Silicon Valley Bank, just blowing up and losing everyone's monies, the i2 financial solution is 100% secure and 100% insured. So it's pretty cool because with the turmoil and the turbulence happening in the banking system right now, it'll be very cool for you to know, I imagine, that you can park your money, park your assets somewhere where they're 100% secure and 100% insured. And the best part ever that's coming up right now in the I2 system is that, as I'm pointing out to you, United States dollar could go down very easily in your I2 system. You'll be able to, in your I2 account, you'll be able to swap and exchange your US dollars for other countries' currencies or other digital assets. And when we've launched the I2 system, as soon as possible, we're going to be making available to you a gold and silver token. And the coolest thing about that gold and silver token is that it's 100% backed by vaulted bullion. So if you buy the gold token, you know it's 100% backed by actually safe, secure, stored, vaulted gold. If it's the silver token, you know it's backed. And what does that mean? It just means that if you were to put your savings or your money, your assets into a token, it's so cool to know that it's actually backed and vaulted. You're not just buying air and you could wake up one day and the value could be gone. No one's going to buy or trade with it any longer. It's absolutely backed. And that's very rare, because although buying gold and silver physically is great, and it's cool, and it gives you a great sense of security and a feeling of security if you've got some at home. What I always explain to people is, yeah, okay, well, explain to me now how you're going to pay your property taxes with that gold and silver. It's very difficult. Or buy a tank of gas, worst case scenario, at the gas station. Now you guys are going to be haggling, over the weight of gold and these sorts of things. Whereas in your I2 account in the near future, you could take the bulk of your money and park it in a gold or silver token. And then whenever you need to use it, you'll be able to convert it back into the United States dollar and then use your I2 Visa MasterCard, which is linked to your account, to make normal everyday purchases. All right, so moving on. We're in this stage now of stagflation. So now I've got pulled up for you a great video by this gentleman here on the screen, Gregor Gregerson. Now, Gregor happens to be the CEO and founder and owner of one of the world's largest physical gold and silver storage vaults. So let's hear what he's got to say here.
The United States had a deficit of $2.8 trillion. And to put that into context, it took the United States almost 200 years to accumulate the first $400 billion, which is where we were back in 1971. And by 2021, it took them just 50 days to get $400 million in additional debt. So the rate of debt increase went up by a factor of 1,400 times.
2021, the US government, in just 50 days, increased their national debt by almost $500 million. And he said that was an increase in rate of debt accumulation of 1,400 times. So this is the period that we're entering into right now in the United States. Last time this took place was in the 70s. It was resolved in the early 80s by increasing the interest rates to a rate that was really, really high. And the point is, right now, it would be virtually impossible to increase the interest rates to that amount that was used last time to repair the economy. Now, this individual here, Gregor Gregerson, is someone who owns, as I mentioned, a large physical gold and silver vault. And gold and silver is always an amazing asset to park your money in times of economic turbulence. And I think if you want to buy some gold and silver bullion, all the power to you. I know that gives you a great feeling of safety and security. The problem is just how liquid it is and how you can actually use it. With the INFYNIT I2 system that I'm describing, basically we're here behind the scenes. We're working on the I2 system and bringing it now to the marketplace. We're only the fourth blockchain project in the world to ever be approved and verified by a third party to be a 100% secure system. And as a result now, when the I2 system launches, it will be 100% insured, backed by Lloyd's of London, which is pretty cool. And you'll be easily able to swap and exchange your funds, your monies, for different assets, like a gold token, like a silver token, backed by physically vaulted gold and silver, or like other digital assets like Bitcoin or Ethereum or Zadkill coin, which is going to come out and start publicly free trading later on this fall. Okie doke. Now here I have another article pulled up for you. So here is the CEO and chairman of Blackstone. CEO and chairman Stephen A. Schwartzman of Blackstone. What's up with this BlackRock, Blackstone? What are all these finance companies or investment holdings companies? called these names for? I don't know. You tell me. But BlackRock, Blackstone sounds pretty similar. Either way, Blackstone is one of the largest real estate holders and investors in the United States. Now, this guy's meeting with the Vice Foreign Minister, Xi Feng of China. This article talks about how the CEO of Blackstone requested the meeting with him. Well, you don't need to know too much about finance or geopolitics to understand that if the biggest investor in real estate in the United States is reaching out to the Chinese foreign minister, might have something to do with buying real estate. Why would the biggest U.S. real estate investor be buying real estate in China? Well, if the United States economy goes down, that means it's going to be harder to buy and sell real estate. If the United States dollar value goes down, then that means the real estate he's buying and selling is becoming worth less and less and less simply because of the value of the United States dollar. So, with the BRICS nations announcements, like I shared here, led by China, their economies are crushing it. That means the United States dollar goes down more than likely. Chinese yuan could do very well. There might be a little turbulent at the beginning, but eventually long term, it's definitely on paper going to do better than the United States dollar. Well, one of the world's largest real estate investors might want to start investing in and buying Chinese real estate tied to the Chinese dollar or the Chinese yuan. That way, as his real estate holdings go up in value and the dollar, the Chinese yuan, the real estate's tied to, goes up in value, he makes more money. So he's hedging himself, I'm theorizing, against the United States dollar going down in value and the United States economic collapse and recession that's coming up now. As if all of that wasn't enough data and information, this is a very interesting letter that I've got pulled up on my screen here. And this, I do think, is going to impact global macroeconomics that lead to the United States dollar going down in value even more. And when I saw this morning, I was like, that's it. The United States dollar could drop 50% in value in the next 2 years or less. It would take an absolute miracle to occur. So, like you just heard over here, Gregor Gregerson mentions that the United States government in 2021 minted so much money that they added about $500 million to the federal debt in just 50 days. Well, it turns out that this current administration has gone on to mint some of the most money of any political administration in the history of the United States. There's different reports and different numbers around the internet, but I've even seen a report with a figure as high as $16 trillion has been minted in the last less than 3.5 years, which is crazy. Pardon me, not 3.5 years, in the last 3 years. Is that right? Yeah. And that's just insane. And so what's happening is more money is being printed, the value is going down, inflation's going up, economy is getting worse. Now, what does this letter have to do with how the United States dollar could keep going down in value? Well, let me explain. This is a letter from the United States Congress to Antony Blinken, the Secretary of the U.S. Department of State. Who's it from? Good question. You got here Jim Jordan and Michael R. Turner, both U.S. congressmen. And the letter, as you can see here at the top, is dated April the 20th. Now, there's certain words I'm going to use. There's certain words I'm not going to use so that this video doesn't get penalized. But it is a very relevant political, global, macroeconomic piece of information that just came out 4 days ago. Basically, this is about a New York Post story and a certain laptop scandal that took place. Now, the AI can probably read the words here. I'm not going to say it. You guys read on my screen the laptop scandal in question here in this letter. What's happening in this letter is these two congressmen, as I'm showing you here, wrote a letter to the current Secretary of State. Now, the Secretary of State at the time of this story breaking was actually a part of President Biden's campaign at that time. Now, what this letter says is that these two congressmen interviewed one of the most recent, a very recent director of the Central Intelligence Agency, the deputy director of the CIA, whose name was Michael Morrell. And he was one of 51 signatories of a public statement that basically said this story up here regarding this laptop was fake. So 51 top intelligence officials, including this individual who they're interviewing for this letter, Michael Morrell, said that that story I've just shown you on my screen was false. It was Russian misinformation. Okay? Now, we're almost 3 years later, and this letter is confirming that, in fact, when they did interview this individual here, Michael Morrell, the former director of the CIA, that, in fact, his signature and the other 50 signatures were false, that, in fact, they were actually contacted at the time by this guy who worked on President Biden's presidential campaign, and they were told more or less to say that because whether they wanted Biden to win, whatever their personal reasoning was, but they didn't actually, in fact, as 51 intelligence officials, have any evidence whatsoever that this was, in fact, Russian misinformation. And it's come out now after the fact that it was, in fact, actually real. This really was this guy's laptop. And the stuff that's on it, could very well create issues for that family. But why does this matter in terms of global macroeconomics? Well, imagine that you're a government official or you're the leader of another country and you're getting reports from the US intelligence agencies. You're trusting them that what they're telling you is true and you're buying and using the United States dollar. Well, right now, after this letter has been published now 4 days ago, I've never seen anything like it in my life. For the first time ever, you've got a former director of the CIA admitting in a congressional hearing that him and 50 other senior intelligence officers straight up lied about a major issue. This letter goes on to say that if they hadn't have lied about this issue, it could have actually affected the entire outcome of the United States presidential election. So, as a foreign leader of another country, you let me know if after reading a letter like this, despite all the other issues I just shared with you, if you would trust the United States intelligence agencies, the United States government, and the United States dollar as a result. Can you trust the reports that they give you from this point forward, seeing that they're admitting here now under oath that they lied about something like this? And the reality is probably not. Probably can't afford to trust them, as the old expression goes, as far as you could throw them. And as a result, I feel like this is going to damage, unfortunately, more and more the United States international ties. I think it will damage more and more the United States international trade, and all of that will negatively impact the United States dollar. Now, this might seem like a little bit of a tangential letter here to throw in, and I'm cool with whatever your political stance is. This is not a political video. It's a financial impact, United States dollar value going down upwards of 50% in the next 2 years video. But I promise you right now, this level of scandal and controversy has never been seen, at least in my lifetime. And the fact it's all here on written record, and you have this former director of the CIA admitting it, that they basically lied for a political thing. I promise you, most countries are now going to look at every other intelligence piece, every other document that comes out of these intelligence agencies in the United States, know that this kind of stuff is what's going on, know that they can't trust their reports, and just to be safe, they'll probably hold even less US dollar, just to be safe for their countries. They're going to move more so towards operating with BRICS nations and other nations that aren't as politically, prospectively right now corrupted at the absolute highest levels, simply because it's just safer and a more stable bet to work with these other nations' currencies, and maybe even more cryptocurrencies. And that's why I've got pulled up here now for you coinmarketcap.com. It's a great website. You can see the total amount of worldwide global cryptocurrency being held. This shows here $1.1 trillion is being held right now. In the last 24 hours, over $36 billion was traded. If you follow me on Instagram, you'll see that I mentioned my personal prediction is that after hitting $30,000 US per Bitcoin, Bitcoin is now going to continue to go down to about 25, at which point I'm predicting, based on the patterns that I'm personally seeing, it will regain from 25 and continue on to be a bull market from there. So if you found this video of value, those are the reasons, that's the data as to why I personally feel the United States dollar can and will lose upwards of 50% in the next 2 years. So you need to be empowered with the solution for how you can take your money and get it out of US dollar quickly, easily, and securely. And there's no better solution that I'm aware of that can offer you 100% security and 100% insurance like the INFYNIT TV i2 financial solution, coming soon. Thanks for watching, guys. Make sure to like the video and leave me a comment if you enjoyed this. My name is Mr. Beckman with INFYNIT TV. Be well.